The coach pointed straight at Aaliyah Trent's face and said, loud enough for the entire natatorium to hear, "You swim like someone who's never seen a real pool before. Go back to whatever kiddie splash pad raised you." Nobody laughed. But nobody spoke up either. Aaliyah stood at the edge of lane 4, goggles in her hand, water still dripping from her practice set. She was 22 years old. She had been swimming competitively since she was 9, and head coach Dale Mercer had just said that to her in front of 47 people. She nodded once, pulled her goggles back on, got in the water. That was the kind of person Aaliyah Trent was. The kind who swallowed it, turned around, and kept going. And that quality, which looked like strength from the outside, had been costing her for years. Her mother, Beverly Trent, worked double shifts at a laundry facility in Riverside, California. She'd worked there since Aaliyah was 4 years old, the year Aaliyah's father decided the weight of a family was more than he'd signed up for. Beverly never remarried, never complained, not in front of Aaliyah anyway. What she did do was drive 40 minutes each way, 3 times a week, to get Aaliyah to the public pool in San Bernardino, where a retired coach named Mr. Oduya noticed a 10-year-old girl whose freestyle stroke was mechanically close to perfect. Mr. Oduya coached Aaliyah for free for 4 years. He told Beverly that her daughter had something he hadn't seen in a long time, maybe ever. Beverly nodded politely and went home and cried in the parking lot, not from sadness, but from the specific terror of loving something your child wants so badly. You're afraid of what happens to them if it doesn't work out. It worked out. Partly. Aaliyah earned a scholarship to Pacific Western University. Division I swimming. She was the only black woman on the roster. She did not make a big deal of this. She focused on her time. She focused on the clock. She broke the school record in the 100-meter butterfly twice in her sophomore year. She qualified for Olympic trials in her junior year. And then she met Coach Dale Mercer. Mercer had taken over the program that fall. He was 61, former Olympic qualifier himself from the 1988 Games. Had coached 3 world-ranked swimmers and carried every one of those credentials like body armor. He walked into the pool deck the first day and surveyed his new team with the expression of a man who had expected more. His gaze landed on Aaliyah and moved on quickly. Too quickly. The kind of quick that says something without saying anything. The first month, he put her in the B training group. The B group swam an hour later, with less pool access, fewer yards, and the assistant coach running their sets, while Mercer worked personally with the 6 swimmers he'd decided were worth his time. None of those 6 looked like Aaliyah. She didn't say anything. She trained. She asked the assistant coach, a 26-year-old named Rob Finley, who was clearly uncomfortable with all of it, whether there was a specific technical reason she'd been placed in the B group. Rob looked at the ceiling, told her to keep her head down and trust the process. She kept her head down. She trusted the process. In November, Mercer moved 2 B group swimmers to the A group. Neither of them had times close to Aaliyah's. She went home that night, sat on the edge of her bed in her off-campus apartment, and called her mother. Beverly picked up on the second ring. "Something happened," Aaliyah said. She explained it. All of it. The groupings, the times, the way Mercer looked at her, or, more accurately, the way he didn't. Beverly was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Baby, do you still want this?" "Yes." "Then I need you to hear me. What that man thinks of you has nothing to do with what you are. You understand? Nothing. His opinion of you doesn't get to live in your body. Don't let it." Aaliyah wrote that down on a note card and taped it to the mirror above her bathroom sink. His opinion doesn't get to live in your body. She looked at it every morning for 8 months. In February, the team traveled to a major invitational in Austin, Texas. Mercer had submitted the relay lineup the night before, and Aaliyah was not on it. She had the second fastest butterfly split on the team. The swimmer Mercer chose instead had the 4th fastest. Everyone in the program knew. Nobody said anything out loud, except one person. Her teammate, a junior named Petra. No, a girl named Kelsey Vo, Vietnamese American, distance swimmer, known for being the most bluntly honest person on the roster, walked up to Mercer during warm-ups and said, "Coach, Trent's split is faster. Why isn't she on the relay?" Mercer looked at Kelsey for a moment. Then he said, "Lineup decisions are mine to make. You swim your race." Kelsey came and found Aaliyah in the locker room. She sat down next to her on the bench and said, "I said something. I want you to know that." Aaliyah looked at her. "What did he say?" Kelsey shook her head. "What they always say." Aaliyah nodded. She changed into her competition suit. She was swimming the individual 100 butterfly. That afternoon, the one event Mercer couldn't pull her from, because her seed time was too high to justify scratching her without drawing questions from the conference officials. She stood behind the block in lane 6. The water under the lights looked silver. She thought about her mother. She thought about Beverly's hands, rough from years of handling industrial machines, and how those hands had braided her hair before every meet until Aaliyah was old enough to do it herself. She thought about Mr. Oduya, who had mailed her a card when she made Olympic trials qualifying starts that said, simply, "I knew." 2 words. The starter called them to the block. Aaliyah stepped up. She thought, not for him, not against him, just for this. The beep fired. She hit the water clean. What happened in the next 55 seconds is the kind of thing that's difficult to describe to someone who hasn't felt it. Swimmers talk about a state where the effort disappears, where your body stops being something you're operating and becomes something you're simply inhabiting, where the water doesn't resist you, but receives you. Aaliyah had felt it twice before in her life. Once at 13, in a tiny meet in Pomona, with maybe 30 people watching. Once at 18, in a high school state final. She felt it now. She touched the wall. She pulled off her goggles, blinking in the light, and looked up at the scoreboard. 55:01. The women's American record in the 100-meter butterfly, set in 2009, stood at 55:98. Aaliyah stared at the number. She thought she'd misread it. She looked again. 55:01. The natatorium was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then it wasn't. The official from USA Swimming who was credentialed at the meet walked immediately to the timing table. Standard protocol. A time like that triggers automatic review. The touchpad readings were checked. The backup timing system confirmed it. The split times confirmed it. Everything confirmed it. 55:01. She had just broken the American record by nearly a full second. Kelsey Vo was screaming from the warm-down pool. The assistant coach Rob Finley was standing with both hands over his mouth. Several of Aaliyah's teammates were at the lane ropes, reaching for her, and she realized her cheeks were wet and it wasn't pool. She turned around in the water. Dale Mercer was standing at the far end of the pool deck, clipboard at his side. He was looking at the scoreboard. His expression was something Aaliyah had never seen on his face before. It wasn't shame, exactly. It was closer to the look of a man who has made a calculation he cannot undo, and who is only now understanding what that calculation cost. She looked at him for a moment. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her phone had 17 missed calls by the time she got to the locker room. Her mother had been watching the live stream on her laptop during a break at work. Beverly had called twice, then texted, then called again. The text said, "Baby, baby, I'm screaming. Call me." Aaliyah called her. Beverly picked up before the first ring had finished. She didn't say hello. She just said, "I saw it." And then neither of them spoke for a while, and that silence held more than most conversations. The calls from USA Swimming's national team coordinator came the next morning. Aaliyah sat in her apartment with a cup of coffee she forgot to drink and listened to a woman explain that pending ratification, which was a formality. Aaliyah Trent of Pacific Western University had broken the American record in the 100-meter butterfly and would be receiving a direct invitation to the U.S. Olympic trials. She wrote it down on a note card, taped it next to the first one, above the sink. The story got out. These things always do. A clip from the meet live stream circulated on Twitter, then Instagram, then the broader sports media. A journalist from The Athletic filed a piece within 72 hours. It was a good piece, careful with its language, and it noted, without making it the entire story, that Aaliyah had been placed in the B training group at Pacific Western, that she had been excluded from the relay lineup despite her split times, and that the record-breaking swim had come in an individual event that had been difficult for the coaching staff to justify scratching her from. Dale Mercer gave a statement through the university's athletic communications office. It said he was proud of Aaliyah's performance and had always believed in her potential. Two of Aaliyah's teammates read it and sent her a text that was just a string of question marks. Aaliyah did not respond publicly. She was busy. The trials were in Omaha that summer. She flew in 4 days early. She trained at the official practice facility and kept to herself and ate well, and slept 8 hours a night and called her mother every evening. Beverly had taken the week of finals off from work. Her manager had approved it without hesitation the moment Beverly mentioned what her daughter had done. Some things transcend standard leave policies. The morning of the 100 butterfly final, Aaliyah sat in the ready room with 7 other women, all of whom she had swum against before, all of whom were excellent. The top 2 finishers would represent the United States in Paris. That was the entire equation. Everything in her life, all of it, the early mornings and the long drives, and Mr. Oduya's free lessons and Beverly's double shifts and the note cards above the sink and Dale Mercer's clipboard, it had all been building to one race that would take less than a minute to complete. She sat quietly. She didn't use headphones. She didn't perform rituals. She just breathed. In the front row of the spectator section, Beverly Trent was sitting with Kelsey Vo, who had also qualified and would swim 2 days later. Kelsey had refused to let Beverly sit alone. They had met for the first time 2 hours earlier and had already established the easy familiarity of people who care about the same person. Beverly was wearing a t-shirt she had made herself. It said on the front in iron-on letters she had applied at 11 o'clock the night before, "That's my daughter." The 8 swimmers were called to the block. Aaliyah looked at the water. The water didn't say anything back. It never did. That was the deal. She stepped up. Across the country, in an office building in Riverside, a woman who worked the early shift had pulled up the live stream on her phone and propped it against a coffee maker. She had told the other staff she just needed 5 minutes. She had been standing there for 30. Nobody asked her to move. The starting signal fired. Aaliyah was in the water before the sound fully reached the stands. She was in lane 4. The swimmer in lane 3 was strong in the first 50, and Aaliyah could sense her there, just at the edge of her peripheral vision below the surface, the slight turbulence that says, "I'm here. Keep up." She kept up. She turned at the wall with the kind of flip turn that Mr. Oduya had drilled into her 800 times, the kind that doesn't cost you, the kind that actually gives something back. Coming off the wall, she was even with lane 3. 20 meters out, she was ahead. 10 meters out, she was alone. She touched the wall. She looked up. 52.87. The crowd noise hit her physically. She actually flinched. She had never heard a sound like that directed at her before, and she did not immediately understand what was happening. Then, she saw Kelsey Vo on her feet in the stands, and then she saw her mother, standing, both hands pressed to her face, and the t-shirt, and Aaliyah understood. 52.87. World record. The previous world record, set by a Hungarian swimmer in 2023, had stood at 55.48. Aaliyah Trent had just broken it by more than 2.5 seconds, in an Olympic trials final, in Omaha, Nebraska, in front of 6,000 people, and a live stream that was about to crash from concurrent viewers. She climbed out of the pool. A USA swimming official draped a towel around her shoulders. A credentialed photographer was already 3 feet away. Somewhere behind the barriers, a media coordinator was saying something into a headset with a tone that suggested the next several hours of everyone's lives had just changed shape. Aaliyah stood there, dripping, and breathed. She thought about Dale Mercer, not with anger. She was done spending anything on that. She thought about him the way you think about a road sign you passed a long time ago. Something that told you where you were at a particular moment, useful once, irrelevant now. He had shown her who he was. She had shown him who she was. The scoreboard had settled the conversation in a language he couldn't argue with. She hoped it stayed with him for a long time. She found her mother in the family meet and greet area 20 minutes later. Beverly had been crying since the turn and did not try to compose herself. She walked straight to Aaliyah and held her, and Aaliyah felt her mother's shoulders shaking and heard her saying something into her hair, a repetition, a kind of chant. I knew, I knew, I knew. 2 words. The same ones Mr. Oduya had written in a card 4 years ago. Maybe that was the real story. Not the record, not Omaha, not the scoreboard. The real story was the people who knew before the scoreboard said anything. Beverly, who drove 40 minutes each way and cried in parking lots because the love was too large to hold inside a car. Mr. Oduya, who saw a 10-year-old stroke mechanics and recognized what they meant. Kelsey Vo, who walked up to a coach with a clipboard and said, out loud, the thing everyone else had decided wasn't their business. They saw her before the world was required to. That's the part that doesn't make the record books. That's the part that made the record possible. Aaliyah Trent went to Paris that August. She swam the 100-meter butterfly in the Olympic final and won gold with a time of 52.71, which broke her own world record by 16/100ths of a second and made her the fastest woman ever to swim the event in the history of the sport. She stood on the podium while the anthem played and looked out at an enormous crowd and thought about a laundry facility in Riverside, California, where a woman who had worked double shifts for 18 years was watching on a phone, propped against a coffee maker. Probably the same spot. Probably the same woman from the early shift standing next to her. She thought about a note card taped above a bathroom sink. His opinion doesn't get to live in your body. It hadn't. It never had. That was always the part he never understood. He thought his opinion was a wall. It wasn't. It was a door she walked through on her way to somewhere he was never going to reach, and she walked through it. Every single day, she walked through it, until the day she didn't need to walk through it anymore. Because she'd already arrived.